Good evening, everyone. If anyone wishes to make public comment, we're going to be working off of our list tonight. So I have it up here. You're free to approach, or I can put one back there. But if anyone would like to make public comment, we're just asking that you please sign up.
Anybody?
Give it a minute for everyone.
There's some seats up front. I know that that's the last.
You're welcome to sit on the ground along the side if that's more comfortable for you. But just come on in so everyone can.
That's.
Think about it. Anyone else? And there's a few seats up front. The back. There's seats up front. Thank you for having me.
Can we move this?
Anyone else in the hallway that still wants to come in, I can see. Wait, to come pizza. Anyone else?
You're asking the church. Good.
All right. Good evening, everyone. This meeting of the Bedford Public Schools School Committee is called to order on February 10th at 7:05 p.m. We will start with a roll call vote. Angel.
Here.
Sheila.
Here, and just please note, I'm actually on a business trip in Texas and I wanted to log on for public comment because I knew we had a lot of people planning to come to speak. So I will be dropping off right after public comment. Just wanted to have that read into the record.
Thank you. Sarah. Here. Brad.
Here.
I'm here. We also have Kim Howell, our military family representative, joining us. So we do have a quorum and remote participants tonight. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid fashion, so we have participation both in the room and via our webinar. Before we get to the actual agenda items, the first thing up tonight, we have the presentation of the Legislator of the Year Award to Representative Kenneth Gordon.
Yes, we have Glenn Kuchar from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees here, who is awarding this to Representative Gordon, and we obviously have Representative Gordon here to receive the award, and we're very, very pleased to have you, and thank you for everything you've done. Everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Gordon, for being here tonight. Just a few remarks. As I'm Sarah McGinley, I'm chair of the Bedford School Committee. Massachusetts State Representative Ken Gordon has been a strong advocate for the priorities of the Bedford Public Schools and students, families, and schools across the Commonwealth since 2012. He has worked closely with town leaders and the superintendent to ensure that the Bedford Public Schools and our voices are considered at the state level. In particular, he has been a strong advocate for equitable funding for special education and the children of military families on Hanson Air Force Base and other military installations. This year, he assumed the role of House Chair of the Joint Committee on Education and has worked in partnership with public school leaders to ensure that the on-the-ground needs of students are covered. We are fortunate to have such a strong champion of public education representing Bedford in the state time. Keep that in mind.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for school committee members, Cliff and Glenn from MESC. Thanks, all of you guys, you came to see your state rep when given this award. I wouldn't even ask for a show of hands of who knows who your state rep even is. But it really has been my honor to serve for whatever, for 14 years or something like that. One of my priorities when I went into the legislature was to make sure there was someone there to stick up for the Bedford schools. We have the youth needs. We continue to have youth needs. Your superintendent reminds me of the needs that are unique to Bedford every day. And we continue to fight for those. And then as chair of Joint Committee on Education, I can stand up for schools, for teachers, for students, and all the other professionals that go into creating an environment in the schools where you're able to learn and ready to learn. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Cliff and Representative Gordon and Glenn for being here tonight. Next on our agenda is public comment, but before we open the public comment period, I did wish to make a statement as the Bedford School Committee Chair this year. I'd like to open the meeting this evening with a few introductory words. At the outset, I want to acknowledge that this is a challenging time for our school district, our community, and the people who live and work here. Together, we're grappling with significant changes and uncertainty, and those factors understandably can spark a wide range of reactions, including fear, stress, and anger too. My colleagues on the school committee and I have heard from many of our constituents over the past couple weeks through various channels. Emails, phone calls, text messages, conversations with grocery stores, and more. We've heard from parents, students, staff, and other residents. We've shared concerns, questions, and criticisms on important issues about the future of our schools. We're grateful to all who have given input, and especially to those of you who have taken the time to be here tonight, perhaps to share your perspectives in this public forum. I want to extend a special welcome to the students who are in attendance. Your willingness to make your voices heard gives us great pride and hope. Civic engagement is a crucial part of a strong education, and we need you to continue to speak up. Whether through public testimony or through the other ways that students and adults are sharing their viewpoints, I can say unequivocally that we are listening. When a concern is raised to the committee, we take appropriate action on matters within our jurisdiction. We value your input and we strive to make decisions that are in the best interest of the students and families we serve. I'd like to say a few words about a couple of the issues that are clearly top of mind for many in this community. First, since our last meeting, the Bedford School Committee and the community have been informed of the resignation of Heather Galante as principal of Bedford High School. The school committee would like to express our sincere gratitude to Principal Galante for her many years of service to the district, including the past decade as principal. Recently, as she conveyed in a message to the high school community last week, Principal Galante made the difficult decision to take leave under the Family and Medical Leave Act to care for her family. She also made the decision to resign at the end of that leave in order to pursue new professional opportunities. We appreciate her contributions and wish her and her family the very best. We recognize that a leadership transition can be particularly in the middle of the school year, involving a long-standing member of the community. However, we also know that Bedford High School will continue to excel and move forward. We're grateful that Superintendent Schwang appointed Dr. Kelly Williamson as acting principal. He is working closely with the outstanding team of educators and support staff at the school to ensure its continued success. We hope that all of you will support Dr. Williamson and the entire BHS community by doing your part to focus on what lies ahead. Second, we have received questions and comments about the budget for next year that the school committee approved completely. Like districts across the Commonwealth and across the country, Bedford is facing serious fiscal challenges. Over the past several months in particular, we have worked closely with the superintendent and his team with input from many members of the community to address the harsh reality that the cost of operating the school district next year exceeds the revenue available. In simplest terms, across the board, expenses are escalating at a much faster rate than the money we have to support them. That requires us to make difficult decisions. The school committee has worked diligently and thoughtfully on a budget that balances our duty of fiscal stewardship to the taxpayers of Bedford with our commitment to outstanding instruction, student services, and support. Our proposed budget increase includes an increase of 3.08%, which is a little more than the financial committee's guideline. The school committee unanimously supported that proposal in order to avoid any significant reduction in services that would undermine the quality of education that our students receive. As we have stated throughout the budget process, personnel salaries make up 84% of our budget. Therefore, it is impossible to close significant budget gaps without some impact on staff. The superintendent's budget proposal that was approved by the school committee is designed to minimize not only the number of positions reduced, but the number of employees affected by those reductions. I can assure you, in a perfect world, with unlimited resources, the fiscal year 27 budget would not reduce a single position, but we do not live in a perfect world. The budget represents our very best effort to make the most of a difficult situation. By law, the school committee does not get involved in staffing decisions at each of the schools. However, we will continue to support the superintendent, his team, and our building leaders as they devise plans for next year that put the needs of students first. Again, I remain hopeful that these challenges are not so great that they can threaten the core of what makes Bedford Public Schools an exceptional place to teach and to learn. I believe this to be a strong, resilient community that cares deeply about public education, a community that will continue to move forward whatever may come our way. With that, we'll move to the public comment period. Speakers must identify themselves and their addresses prior to providing comment, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to speak. In the spirit of what I shared earlier, I want to remind all of the speakers and attendees that typically neither the school committee nor the superintendent responds directly to any questions or comments raised in public testimony. Please do not take that protocol to mean that we have not heard you. We sincerely appreciate you all being here tonight and your willingness to share your thoughts. We ask only that you do so with respect and civility and focus on the issues. That said, sure, I'm going to recognize Superintendent Schwung.
Before we begin public comment this evening, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the students who chose to show up tonight. Thank you for showing up. Your decision to show up, to listen, and if you choose, to speak publicly is meaningful. Sharing your perspectives, especially when they are rooted in personal experiences, takes courage. Student voice matters deeply in this community and to me, and your presence here reflects care for your schools and for one another. While we may not all experience situations in the same way or always agree on conclusions, I believe deeply that multiple perspectives can be true at the same time, and that differing viewpoints are okay. Respectful dialogue, particularly when it includes student voices, helps us learn, reflect, and grow, both as individuals and as a school system. We are committed to working with you, students, directly through the Student Healthy School Hours and Snow Day Working Group soon to be convened, student representatives for this school committee, and direct student input as part of the upcoming search for a new VHS principal. Your participation will be critical in the months ahead as we seek creative solutions together. We welcome your voices this evening, and I look forward to hearing what you want to share.
Thank you. As a reminder, the public is invited to comment during this part of the meeting in accordance with Bedford Public Schools policy. Please say your name and full address for the record and keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Once the public comment period closes, members of the public will not be able to make comments or address questions to any speakers or members of the committee. We ask that you refrain from using the chat or Q&A functions in Zoom after the public comment section has closed. So at this time, I'm going to ask anyone who's on the webinar, if you wish to give public comment, to raise your virtual hand. So if there's anyone. No, I don't.
I can give you another sheet on the list.
Sure. So the way we're going to do this, beginning with past practice, is we're going to recognize one speaker at a time, starting with someone in the room and then changing over to someone online. And we'll just go back and forth until everyone who wishes to be heard has been heard. So starting off tonight, we're going to start with Karen Bernstein first.
All right, good evening. My name is Karen Bernstein, and I'm a math teacher at John Glenn Middle School. I'm here tonight to urge the school committee to remain firm in support of the current school budget that is awaiting finance committee approval, and to express my support for several important initiatives underway in the district. I was encouraged to see that the finance committee recently acknowledged the thoughtfulness and hard work that went into creating this budget. This year's process was especially challenging due to the teacher salary increases. Those increases were originally proposed by Superintendent Schwang 2 years ago to improve teacher retention in Bedford. I live in Westford, and I have personally seen how lower salaries have led to the loss of strong educators to other districts. In contrast, Bedford's salary adjustments have clearly helped retain teachers. However, I recognize that the same increases put pressure on the budget and on taxpayers. Striking a balance between competitive salaries and fiscal responsibility is not easy. Superintendent Schwang has worked diligently to manage that balance. He limited staff reductions by carefully managing voluntary departures and prioritizing minimal impact on student learning. He also thoughtfully evaluated the use of Special Education Stabilization Fund, which he established in his first year, and the implementation of student fees. These decisions significantly reduced the need for deeper staffing cuts. While student fees are new for Bedford, they're very reasonable in comparison to neighboring districts. In Westford, our high school students are paying $325 per sport in addition to parking and bus fees. I respectfully ask that the school committee continue supporting this budget through the town meeting and to avoid the significant cuts that would be required to limit the increase to only 2.5%. In addition, Superintendent Schwang has actively sought outside funding to support the district. 2 such grants are included on tonight's agenda. Beyond funding, he has also brought in meaningful external programs to support students. As a 7th grade teacher, I have been involved in the anti-bullying and anti-hate efforts for many years. This year, however, we have taken major steps forwards through the work of the Anti-Hate Task Force and the Celtics Playbook Initiative at the middle school. Superintendent Schwang dedicated many hours during the summer to launching the task force. And as a member of the task force, I am deeply grateful for his leadership. The Celtics Playbook Initiative empowers middle school students to engage in student-led anti-hate work, supported by Bedford high school students. Superintendent Schwang identified this opportunity and helped bring it to Bedford. I look forward to seeing the impact of this student-driven initiative on the middle school and the high school, and I ask that the school committee continue to support innovative programs like these that strengthen our schools and our community. Thank you for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna recognize our online speaker, Ben Person.
1 second. Ben, you can unmute.
All right, I think it's working. Thank you. Ben Krasner, 2 Wildwood Drive. I spent some time looking at the fiscal year 27 public hearing budget packet. For clarity, any page numbers I'm citing are from the PDF file itself rather than the numbers at the bottom. I saw some inconsistencies between the summary table and the detailed backup schedules and how the fiscal year 26 baseline figures are presented, specifically in the summary by major expense category on page 14. The FY26 revised baselines for special ed out of district tuition, general transportation, and special ed transportation don't match the fiscal year 26 revised Q1 totals that you can see on pages 18, 20, and 21. The differences are kind of a small fraction of the total budget, but they do affect the year-over-year comparisons and the financial narrative in those categories. So I'm requesting that we have a corrected packet or a short errata at the end, clarifying which figures are the intended baselines. I'll submit the specific line items that I've talked about here in writing so it can be tracked and addressed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
There are no.
Moving back to the room, Jesse Carajulio.
My name is Jesse Cardullo and I live at 24 Millside Avenue in Bedford. I'm a student athlete at Bedford High School and I'm here tonight to present the paper version of our student petition to the school committee and those involved in the Healthy School Hours Working Group. We've collected signatures from VHS students regarding the Healthy School Hours initiative and the potential negative effects it will have on the VHS community. I won't read the whole position statement out loud as it's a bit long and I sent it to you all electronically on paper if you want it. But to briefly summarize, we believe that while the science of the benefits of later school hours is clear, options A and B as outlined would have a significant negative impact on students, parents, and even local businesses that would outweigh the benefits of later start times. With that in mind, I and the students who signed the petition respectfully request that we seek a third option to hopefully lessen the burden of new school hours. We recognize that this is not an easy task, so we thank you for putting out as much time and energy into this as you have. We also understand that some sacrifices must be made and there will be some impacts that we can't avoid. But that being said, we hope the stakeholders can work together to find a better solution, and there are BHS students who are more than willing to be a part of that solution. If you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them, and you have my email if you need to reach me. Thank you for your consideration and your time.
Do you want papers?
You want, you can leave those non-graphic later. Thank you. All right, is there anyone else online wishing to give public comment? Now would be the right time to push your hand. All right, seeing none, we'll continue in the room. Rebecca Mahoney.
Good evening. My name is Rebecca Mahoney. I live at the Franklin Road, and I have two sons who are seniors at BHS. I've taught for 28 years in public education, currently at Concord Carlisle High School for the past 22 years. Having taught under many superintendents, I can say with confidence that the concerns that staff, teachers, parents, and students have raised regarding Mr. Chuang are disturbing and not normal. The departure of Heather Galante punctuates a continued trend of Bedford schools losing skilled and experienced female leaders. The frequency of complaints and departures confirms his involvement as a factor. It's clear that Mr. Chuang's behavior towards women, including young women, very students in his charge, incites harm. This has led to Title IX complaints, students coming forward to tell stories of disturbing behavior, and an abuse of Mr. Chuang's power by using his position as an open forum to influence the community. Two young women spoke publicly to describe their experiences being demeaned, belittled, dismissed, and left in tears by Mr. Chuang. I was moved by both Elise Tassinari and Vivian Liu's strength and composure. And I was also alarmed. I've never heard of a scenario where a school leader's behavior caused students to come forward and speak publicly about the way they were treated. This is not normal. I've been asked what's happening in Bedford Public Schools by my colleagues. People are talking about it and not in a good way. It's embarrassing, and again, not normal. We teach our kids to stand up for themselves and others when they have been harmed. And that's exactly what these brave young women did. The lesson that you have just taught our kids is that we do not believe them. The serious accusations brought against Mr. Chuang should give all school committee members pause. What we can all agree on is that his presence is dividing our community. I can tell you firsthand that a divided faculty and community affects morale and incites negative feelings, ultimately at the expense of our kids. Mr. Chuang lacks the experience, leadership, disposition, and character to make Bedford schools successful. As a resident who voted for members of this committee, I strongly urge you not to renew Mr. Chuang's contract, and in fact, he should be immediately removed from his role. Let's send a message that we believe women. Thank you.
continue on with public comment. Elise Passanari.
Elise Passanari, 15 Fall River Road. Good evening. The number of students here tonight should tell you something. This is not normal, and this is not small. Thank you to the students here in the room and those online. Our voice matters. We are here because our school just lost our principal, Mrs. Galante. We are here because the educators we trust are hurting. And we are here because many of us believe this all did not have to happen. We know there was a Title IX investigation, and we know the report found that Mr. Chuang was not responsible for gender discrimination. But that narrow finding does not mean everything is fine. It does not raise the concerns that have been raised again and again by staff, by students, and by families. Treating that report as proof that everything is fine misses the point. The same problems people have been talking about for months still exist. The same concerns about leadership still exist. And now people are leaving. Students feel dismissed and unheard. We told you this back in October, and the student representative chair is still empty. That silence speaks loudly to us. We are here to support our principal and teachers, the people who make our schools feel safe, supportive, and human. We want you to understand clearly, many students strongly oppose renewing the superintendent's contract. This is not about politics. This is about trust, and trust is broken. We are asking you to listen to the students in front of you and take real action to fix this. Because when leaders don't listen, people leave. And when people leave, students lose. Thank you.
We're just waiting for everyone. Everyone online, I can't see, we're waiting for people to leave so we can continue.
We're fine to see.
We're going to continue with public comment.
Thank you. I thank you all. I'm Mark Bailey with Monroe. And I want to start by acknowledging what's clear as we return out. I counted about 100 back there. Student voices matter. These students using their voices, taking action, that's what democracy looks like, and it's what Bedford schools have taught them to do. I won't comment on Heather Galante except to say she's a neighbor and I join everyone in mourning her departure. And really just here to talk about the budget and try to offer some perspective on the town's overall financial position to add a little bit of context. As the opening remarks by the chair mentioned, Bedford is in a serious financial situation. Revenues are down, forecasting a modest deficit next year and a bigger one the following year. Like many towns across the Commonwealth, we may need to vote on the Prop 2.5 override in the coming years. We've been trying to slow spending growth to delay that moment. We asked every department to keep budget growth below 2.5%. The schools are the majority of the budget, And the schools achieved a 3.08% growth through rigorous, painful, hard work. The critical context that I want folks to understand is that the student enrollment is declining. We're projecting to have fewer students next year and continue to decline through 2035. That enrollment reality is why staffing adjustments are necessary. We all know the details, here of the budget reductions. It's not quite accurate to say or to imply that 17, teachers who won't be coming back are, involuntary, because 12.5 of those are voluntary departures. It's fair to say that certain class sizes will increase slightly, but stay within the guidelines. It's fair to say that the electives will be more limited, but there's priority on the high demand in the AP courses. It's a real impact. Students may not get their first choice, but elective options are not. School committee like to say that we're in the people business around here, because so much of the budget is salaries and benefits. You all fought to land at 3.8% instead of the 2.5% guideline given to you by the finance committee, specifically to avoid destabilizing cuts to educators and structures. This budget crisis is one of 1,000 things this generation is inheriting that they didn't create. Climate change, gun violence, an epistemological crisis. We in town government may not be as responsible for this budget situation as it may seem to the students, but we are absolutely responsible to the budget situation. And we are responsible to the students. So what I ask of the school committee with continued deep gratitude for your service. Have I did minutes already? Students know how reductions will affect them. Continue to collaborate with students, to be creative in mitigating the impact. We can't maintain the same staffing levels as enrollment drops, but we can stay open to finding ways to prioritize differently, to be creative and minimize harm. Student voices matter. The school committee should continue to listen.
We're gonna leave it open for a few more seconds, so if there's anyone else either in the room or online who wishes to give public comment, please raise your hand.
My name is Stephanie Keep. I live in 12th Grade Road. I'm a mom to 3 BPS students at 3 different schools. I've been involved in education for my entire adult life and recently made the transition to the classroom in a neighboring district. I don't know if I call myself a school committee groupie, but I do try my best to be informed. I was very vocal during COVID, trying to get our kids back safely. Was the petitioner that brought forward the article to get fair salaries for our teachers 2 years ago. Was on the search committee for our new assistant superintendent and now a member of the Healthy School Hours Task Force. I've made plenty of comments and have also bit my tongue through many a meeting. I have nodded along with comments I agree with and made a hump face that to comments I've disagreed with. I have no poker face. There's nothing special about this. It's democracy and discourse. It's what being engaged is all about, as some people have already said. But in the last year or so, I have heard meeting after meeting comments that seem not to help further our community goals or work toward problem solving. These comments have been, in my mind, nothing short of mudslinging. Meeting after meeting, I have watched our superintendent and you, the school committee, stay quiet, and I understand it's because you have to. You can't speak about personnel, student, or legal matters. More recently, I've seen anonymous social media posts pop up and flyers being handed out in our schools. If this were a Gothic novel, the writers would be handing out pitchforks and torches. It's disappointing, it's enraging, and it's overwhelmingly sad. The bottom line, the idea that Superintendent Schwang doesn't care about students or student voices is demonstrably false. I have come with receipts. I watched last year as the superintendent and school committee made sure that the student rep had equal time to voice their thoughts. They went out of their way went out of your way to make sure that she knew her opinion was valued. I understand that she has a different view of her experience now, but anyone can go back and look at videos and judge for themselves how she was treated. More recently, when our task force convened, Superintendent Schwang spent much of the first meeting trying to convince the rest of the working group to open up seats to students. We said no. He did not give up. He enthusiastically described what an amazing learning experience it would be and how important it was for us to listen directly to the students. We still said no. And by the way, that
task force is made up mostly of women who are in positions of power in this school system. Spoiler alert, he and the rest of us are taking student voices so seriously that we're going to be asking you tonight to reconsider the charge that you have given us. Most recently, in the last week alone, the superintendent has been to a varsity basketball game, a JGMF social, and made chili for a JGMF Super Bowl event. And that's just what I know of. You know how much of that is in the job description? None of it. How can anyone in this town think that the superintendent doesn't value student voices? It feels to me like there are members of this community who think that being listened to is the same thing as always getting your way. It is not. Two things can be true. A leader in the high school was admired and respected, and some students are sad that she moved on, and it was her decision to make and the right move for her. People leave jobs all the time for simple and complex reasons, and sometimes it sucks. We, the adults and leaders of Bedford, need to model for kids how to handle the disappointment and anger they are feeling. We need to tell them that their feelings are important and that they should be heard, but not by shouting into a void, but by asking for a meeting and being willing to listen as well as speak. We need to tell them that you have to listen not just to people who agree with you. The fact that they all left this meeting tells me that no one has passed along that message, that if you really want to be part of the democratic process, you have to listen to different opinions. We need to tell them that there's undoubtedly a lot that they don't know, so it's always better to ask questions than to make assumptions. And we need to reassure them that this town is full of people, particularly Superintendent Schwang, who work and devote countless hours of energy to making the right decisions to allow them to have the best educational experience possible.
Is there anyone else online or in the room wishing to give public comments? Please raise your hand. Is there anyone? Seeing none, we'll close the public comments period.
Sarah, I just want to remind you, I do have to leave, and likewise, I thank everyone for all of their comments this evening. So thank you, and I'll see you at the next meeting.
Bye, Sheila.
Thank you, Sheila.
Bye.
So to know, Sheila has jumped off. Assuming no one on the side of the table.
Your consent agenda contains the minutes from the last meeting, a standard approval for our student status state competition from overnight, which requires school committee approval. And two new grants, one to support the implementation of the new regulations related to time on practices. And one to support the implementation of our strategic initiative around diverse educator pathways, with thanks to Assistant Superintendent Mario Vines and HR Director Jillian Chartier for taking the lead on for these additional sources of revenue.
Thank you. This is our consent agenda. We'll go around to see if anyone wishes to remove anything from the consent agenda or has any comments, starting with you, Kim.
No comments or requests.
Angel.
Sounds good to me. I'm good.
There.
Nope.
None of us do, so may I hear a motion that the school committee approve the consent agenda as presented, including the minutes from January 27th, 2026, the overnight field trip to the state competition Seaport and Boston Convention Center, March 12th through 14th, 2026, and the grant acceptance 2026 FC 0213, supporting implementing of updated regulations regarding timeout practices for $50,000, and 2026 FC 0253, transforming diverse educator pathways for $70,700.
You said all those words, all I have to say is so moved.
Right, Brad has moved, Sarah has seconded, roll call vote, Angel.
Yes.
Sarah? Yes. Brad?
Yes.
Tommy, yes, 4-0, motion passes. Moving along, our next agenda item is the Bedford High School Program of Studies revisions, both Superintendent Schwang and the VHS administrative team.
I'd like to invite acting principal and assistant superintendent Dr. Kelly Williamson and assistant principal Maura Brady and program director for world languages activated to the table. And thank them in advance for their very hard work on this. This is the standard item where we present any substantive changes to the program of study for the upcoming year. We do endeavor to do this as early as possible in order to ensure that students will start this process soon. One thing I do want to highlight that despite our budgetary constraints, we are actually adding to the operating in terms of opportunities, particularly in world language, which is why I had this here tonight, as well as in music. And then there are several housekeeping sort of items to align categories, but I will turn it over to the team to give you an overview.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So we're hoping tomorrow morning actually to publish the program of studies provided, so go well. Tonight we're all in agreement. I'll start with a few of our proposed changes and then I'll pass it on to Adam, who can go through some of the changes that we are hoping will get endorsed tonight for our world language offerings. A few of the things in the beginning of the programming studies really are more mechanical things that needs cleaning up. Page 5, under graduation requirements, we are going to when we do credit all of our OCAD classes as meeting the OCAD graduation requirement, rather than have just a small handful of courses listed as examples. We're taking them out where all of the classes under OCAD actually do satisfy that requirement. For our JORTC program, my understanding is that for years we had aerospace with HR. And even last year, admittedly, I wasn't quite sure what HR meant. This year I learned that this is the group for whom the health requirement for grade 10 students in ROTC, how they fulfill their health requirement. However, the HR didn't stand for a health requirement, which I thought it actually was homeroom, which we don't have. These students are scheduled during flex period and they're all grade 10 students. So that's just clarifying the language there. So moving from aerospace science with HR to aerospace science with flex. And they're all grade 10 students. Again, that's how they'll fulfill their health part of all of our sophomores. For performing arts, we've found that in the last few years, we had a number of students self-studying for the AP music theory course, while also taking music theory during their day at school. So we're proposing an AP music theory course, so that transfers from Bedford High School after we reflect on really their experience in what we learned in class and taking the exam. For honors choir and chamber orchestra, again, this is anything else to align with what our practice actually has been for a number of years. The program of studies noted that only 10th, 11th, and 12th graders could take those classes, where in fact we do have a number of 9th graders enrolled in both of those courses. Science, technology, and engineering. We are moving computer science to the occupational education section, where those classes will fulfill students who take computer science classes. It will fulfill their OCAD requirement, the 2.5 credits needed for graduation. Couple of things that we're also cleaning up in this section. Students who take continuing manufacturing production technology after the initial course. So students who take manufacturing and production technology 2 and 3, those are honors level courses. We'd like to have those labeled as honors level. That actually accurately reflects the rigor of the work that the students are doing once they move past manufacturing and production technology 1, which would remain unleveled. What we did do last year, because the College Board split AP Physics C into 2 actual classes and 2 AP exams. We now have 2 AP Physics C classes We have AP Physics C Mechanics and AP Physics C Electricity and Magnetism. The prerequisites won't change, but it is now 2 classes, and that's thanks to the College Board who broke the AP Physics into 2 tests, two exams. Cleaning up the table of course offerings under science, our STEP program, which is our sub-separate program for students from grades 9 through 12. There is a science is one of their 4 classes, and they have always taken what would appear on their transcript: Science 1, Science 2, Science 3, Science 4. We have actually, rather than being so generalized, we are now doing conceptual microbiology, conceptual macrobiology, and principles of technology, all unleveled. And each year, right now, we were taking principles of, conceptual microbiology. Next year, moving to macrobiology. The following year, principles of technology for students in our STEP program. And there is no science 4 because we have a 3-year science requirement. And the hope is that after the 4 years, the 3 years through the science trajectory in our STEP program, students will be exploring science electives outside of the program, whether it's marine science, forensics. And special education also connected to our STEP program, realizing that of our four academic courses through STEP, 2 were labeled college prep and 2 were labeled unleveled. So we are proposing to change all to unleveled where we do it, and that would more accurately reflect the courses. We have students at different levels and at different grades. So you can see. And then I will go over the language, passing on to Mr. Bailey.
So I was asked because I unfortunately handed a revision, in Warren that had lots of red, but maybe you need those findings, so that's why I'm doing.
And I appreciate it.
The gist of the changes that we're making is to make the experience of all of our students more equitable, no matter what language they're taking. And as we were looking at the programs, we realized the pathway through different languages varied depending on which language they were taking. So, not to bury the lead, I'm going to start off with a big change. We want to offer AP Latin, so that students who take Latin can also reach the AP level like they do in the other languages. Along those changes with AP, we also want to offer AP French every year rather than an alternate year to give access to students who are hoping to take it during the junior year, not have to either wait or postpone that. And again, because we offer it every year in Spanish, we'd like to have an equitable experience there. The other change that's in there is making sure that there is a through line for college prep courses for all of our languages. So we would have a college prep for all 4 years that currently don't exist in French level 3 and 4 like they do in Spanish. So we'd like to add those. And while it looks like we're adding a course, really is an overlaid course. It's just allowing students to take it at different levels and having a differentiated experience within that course. And then there's just some title changes. One of them for the advanced course that we felt that 2 electives in Spanish, a cinema course and a stories and culture course. Cinema is always more popular. We wondered why, and we thought maybe the title of stories, people reading, so we're changing it to songs and storytelling. It's really not actually changing the curriculum very much. We're just trying to make it a little bit more attractive for students. And also just changing the title of the Francophone cultures and identities to Francophone cultures, just to be a little bit more concise there, but again, not changing the curriculum to the course, rather just the title. And those are some of the Latin courses. In order to realign those, we needed to change what is currently called Latin Advanced. So it's not confused with Advanced Placement Latin, to be more consistent with the nomenclature of Latin courses in other school districts. So it's Latin 1, Latin 2, Latin 3. Then they go on to take a poetry and prose course which is currently separated into two courses, will be combined into one, and then later continue on to the AP Latin course. Again, they would also have access to a college prep track all 4 years to encourage students to take 4 years of a language without feeling that they have to be at a college, excuse me, at an advanced placement or other stuff.
Thank you. Okay, so I just need to. Thank you. We'll go around with questions, comments. Pam, we'll start with you.
No questions or comments, just glad we do this every year. It's always interesting to see what we surface and things that we need to tweak and correct. So I'm glad that we're so thorough and paying attention to all of this.
Thank you. Angel.
The only question I had was the junior ROTC program always only for grade 10 and we just had it listed as 9 to 12, or is this a change that it's now only available for grade 10 students?
No, it's available for all students. This particular section
I
is
see.
for our 10th graders, so that the health component is in there. Both, all students are able to
I
take.
see. Got it. So this is specific to 10th grade for this particular course title, but there are other opportunities throughout the grades for other components.
Exactly, and these students in the 10th grade are actually assigned to JORTC during their flex blocks, so they don't have
I see.
a traditional flex block.
Got it. This is not a kid in high school person that doesn't understand how that works still. So thank you very much. And I'm losing my voice on top of it. Okay, yeah, that was the only question I had. Everything else, I mean, makes sense to me. I mean, again, I think I'd like to highlight, I think, for the community, right, that here's an opportunity to see that while there's budgetary concerns with the budget as a whole, here we are kind of adding components and adding options that make sense kind of for the student body to give them more options and more paths, right, to getting these things complete. So thank you guys for doing the work to put this stuff together. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Angel. Sarah.
Thanks for coming. I am in deep to this program study of rising junior, so we're thinking about this very carefully this year. So thank you. I had a question about the ROTC too, about the 10th grade health. Do they not take the health class that the other 10th graders take?
They take it through ROTC, same as like our students who are in ROTC, they fulfill their PE requirement.
Okay,
through.
yeah. Awesome. I don't have any other, I don't know if Patrick told you, I do love a really good chart. And these are awesome. I love it when you can see very clearly, sort of the progression of, take, choose your own adventure, here in the languages. I want to say a side note, that I did hear from some parents about the Italian and the grant that you got, very positive. Feedback about independent study in Italian, and really great that 2 girls were doing it together. So it's like this, peer accountability, and it's going really well. So I wanted to bring that up to all of us. So
We'll
thank
update
you
on
for
that
that.
in the strategic plan update, but yes, that call out program that Adam spearheaded. Well,
Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you. Brad.
I want to start by saying when Sarah Scoville says the chart is awesome, it's really awesome. It's very demanding standards. So this is great.
And that did, I'm sorry, Brad, but that, to interrupt you, but that did come up at, our most recent BHSPA meeting, where we were actually talking about, overrides and scheduling, that having that kind of trajectory was very helpful. So that is something we're looking to do.
For all,
Kind
because
of
I know
create
math has
various
done it,
pathways.
math has done it forever.
Mhm.
And this is great, and I don't remember. Yeah, the other department, like English is pretty straightforward, right, and history is pretty straightforward, but yeah, science could do, because they have so many core electives, and. Yeah.
And that it's also looking at how like providing all students various pathways. So like, the pre-med pathway with your science classes, but what are other pathways?
And I know a lot of kids take APs, traditionally APs are senior-ish juniors, but a lot of kids take like their physics in their sophomore year, right? Because it's like if they want to do that, they do it after their freshman. Physics is fresh in their mind the freshman year, and then they do it sophomore. So yeah, it would be interesting to see what year you can take everything, yeah. Yeah. Thank you. This is sorry, Brian.
It's all right. I'm just happy. Okay, my only question is about AP physics. I just want to make sure I understand this change. So previously we had AP physics that included both mechanics and electricity magnetism.
Yeah,
And
and
now
the
they-
college board got that.
Right, and now that you have to take one or the other,
We have many students taking both.
simultaneously, or is that like one semester one and one semester the other?
No,
They take
they're
themselves.
year-long courses.
Okay. Okay.
So there are conceivably students, and we do have a number of students on that track, that like physics and, you know, what their plans are after EHS, that will take up to 3 physics classes. We also have project physics too.
Okay. And then if they did that, they would get credit for 2 AP classes, if they did both.
Mhm.
like that.
Yep.
Okay.
And they
great.
take 2 separate tests.
Okay, great, thanks, that's all I want. Yep. Julie?
All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the information. Thank you for these very good charts. I appreciate them as well. A more generalized question. It's great that we're adding, I'm glad that we're finding this additional consistency across languages and elsewhere. Are we eliminating anything? Like, is there any, we're adding a lot in this. But if we're adding, I assume there might be sections taken away or potential to change, when things are offered. Is there any, I guess, how do you address that with all of the language?
So compared particularly with last year, and you know, that was still relatively new to Bedford, but we're actually not offering all that. We're only offering 2 additional courses. And what that would look like is that has to take the place of something else. So we'll need to find a section depending on enrollment numbers. We'll need to find a section or 2. And so we'll have to pull a teacher from something else. So we'll have to figure out what that puzzle looks like once we get the requests. Requested.
Adam, correct, and more correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of what you proposed is sort of, it's not like new kids are gonna take new courses, but because they're overlaid, it's just sort of smoothing. And I think with the AP music theory option, we have an advanced AP course, we expect that students who would have taken that would now be a paid credit. But just to be transparent, so we've not removed any courses from the catalog, from the program of studies, but even the physics C example, I think even this year, some kids wanted to take both tests, both courses, and maybe not everyone could have gotten all of the courses, right? And that happens every year. As we had noted in the budget process, there might be a little bit more pressure on that. But the reason why we're trying to get this done is so that they can launch the process tomorrow, so that ahead of the final decisions around staffing, we actually have the student data information, so we can try to, glove and whatever they call that, hand in glove, everything as much as we can. I do also want to acknowledge that the union and the district just signed a side letter related to we call it the coverage side letter, but it really relates to the ability for staff to either work part-time voluntarily or to pick up an extra section voluntarily with some parameters around the finances that make it mutually agreeable. So we're hoping with that in place, if there's this extra section with kids who want it, but we don't have, another teacher that want a teacher to volunteer to pick up that extra section, or vice versa, someone might, if we have one less section, someone might want to have a part-time year, but the side letter actually guarantees that they would go back to full-time, so they're not at risk of certain options. So we're really hoping to be as bespoke as we can in terms of matching what students want with the resources, but that will be a very intensive process in the month of March. So.
No, thank you. I guess to highlight it, it's student driven. I guess
Yes.
that's what I was getting at. So this is a student driven process that will occur after this is approved. That's my only question. So unless we have anything else,
I would just highlight one other thing on that note, which is, I have to say, I've been familiar with many sort of high schools from across the state, but I've been extremely impressed with the level of student drivenness there is here in Bedford. To the point where I think in some districts, teachers might have a customary set of classes that they teach, and that might drive what's being offered. But here, I think there is a truly authentic approach to match what teachers teach with what students want. And that may mean sometimes a teacher teaches a course that they're not, not their favorite course, what have you, but we always obviously try to maximize the match to what students want to take and teachers want to take, but at the end of the day, sorry, what teachers want to teach and students want to take. But at the end of the day, the student choice is what drives what we offer and what is, and the teachers really work well in terms of trying to do that. So I just want to highlight how effective Bedford High has been at that.
Thank you. May I hear a motion that the school committee approve the proposed revisions to the Bedford High School Program of Studies for the 2026 to 2027 year as presented?
So moved.
Second. Sarah was moved, Sarah and seconded, roll call vote, Angel,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
I'm a yes, 4-0 to 0. Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Related corrections, what's tomorrow? Moving along, we have the next item on the agenda is the Healthy School Hours Working Group Quarter 2 progress.
Thank you. I am joined by multiple working group members tonight. Stephanie Heath is a working group member, Liz Coles and Julie Terrain are also working. Yeah, you can sit wherever you want. Lauren is actually a working group member too, but I know that you did tomorrow. So we actually have half the working here, but Stephanie graciously agreed to come in and share. I wanted to first note that I know of high interest to the community is the results of the survey. This was probably the highest response we've done. Okay, we surveyed about 2,000 respondents between staff, students, and parents. Granted, we basically made every student take it, but we really wanted to hear what students thought. So I'm going to start by there's a chronology of work done to date, and this is the point in time when we were bringing back to you feedback on the options as presented to the committee in November, and survey being the centerpiece of that feedback. So I'm going to share the results of the survey, and then Stephanie will and be available to answer questions and talk to you a little bit about the discussion that was had after we, as a working group, looked at the survey results. Just give me a second here. Yeah. All right, now this not it's nice with the P. Sorry, this is still working on the display of some of these slides. The next one will be better, but this will not be quite as nice, the screen. So 1,953 respondents by the time we closed the survey on February 4th. About 500 parents and caregivers, about 244 staff, which is just over half, and then 1,265 students, which is broken down by 95% response rate at JGMS, a 62% response rate at the high school, and a slightly more than 100% response rate at Lane. So we're not quite sure if students took it more than once. We did debate again anonymity or not, but we wanted people to be able to speak their minds. So with anonymity, you can't necessarily control the fact that some people might accidentally or intentionally take the survey more than once. But very strong representation from grades 5 through 12, which you recall was the same group of students that we queried in the first survey last spring. I will note that I also met with the 5th grade student council last week, and the meeting was at 7:30 as opposed to the start time of Lane School, which is 8:25. I would say of the students, they had the most diverse opinions about the start time, because you could tell, and they said so themselves, that some of the students had the change had already happened for some of them, for others not. So that was a very interesting conversation, especially because it was at 7:30 in the morning. They did want to keep their start time at JGMS to be more regular. Forward. However, in the aggregate, this is consistent with what and you heard, I think, Jesse share earlier this evening. The winning option was other. Of the two options that were offered, option A did overwhelmingly gain support over option B, but as you can see, neither option garnered more support than other. What is other? What does other mean? And so we did break down what other represented. So not surprisingly, 72% or so of other were people who really expressed wanting to keep it the same or not change at all. But the rest of it was also openness to change, but not A and B, which I will be talking with Jesse and his classmates, their classmates in the next few weeks about whether or not they're in that category of a different option, but not A or B. Other folks answering this survey didn't have a strong preference in terms of option A or B. So they might be like, I don't really care which one, but does that mean they want them or want either of them? So when you put it all together, there is still in the aggregate no clear sort of way forward, and also no change at all. It's also not a clear way forward when you combine the number of responses around a different way forward or support for one of the other two ways forward. One issue that I would say surprised me a little bit, it just surprised me, but was very clear, is that there was a lot of concern about the elimination of early dismissal Wednesday, which happens to be tomorrow. Just to give you a little insight of the challenges that early dismissal does present, tomorrow, as you may know right now, I don't know, it's snowing. There's not going to be, from what I've spoken to DPW, enough snow to warrant a snow day, sorry, kids. But we could be on the cusp of a 2-hour delay situation, likely not, but because it's a Wednesday, if we do a 2-hour day on a Wednesday, you're basically, throwing the day. So that creates some operational challenges, and that's happened at least twice already this year. However, what we heard about Wednesdays and why there is resistance to eliminating it, recall that Wednesday being eliminated, the early dismissal being eliminated was sort of a condition in order to keep the times as early as possible in the afternoon in both options. We heard particularly from teachers about the value of collaborative time. I do want to note, and this might not have been clear despite our attempts in the video to explain it, that no collaborative time is being taken away. However, it would have to be scheduled at a different time. But we also heard from teachers about the impact on the curriculum, particularly at the elementary level, on getting the curriculum units and lessons done if you shorten every day by 20 minutes. And that was something that, again, I hadn't, not something that I had contemplated until I'm hearing from more teachers. Students, I think, it's not surprising that students would want to keep getting out of school early, although I'm not sure all students understood that they would be getting out of every other day earlier as well. That said, the other thing that was compelling about what students shared and parents shared is the mental health wellness aspects of a midweek break. We have a very rigorous program here in Bedford, and I think kids appreciate the sort of downtime, if you will. Particularly at the middle school level, there was also people who commented on the fact that students being able to sort of be unsupervised or unstructured for that actually has social emotional wellness benefits as well. So those were things that sort of emerged that may not have been top of mind for the working group when we proposed the two options. But I think it's also important to remember that the purpose of this initiative is not about changing school hours, it's about wellness, particularly related to sleep. But there are other aspects of wellness, like the mental health break, that are something we need to consider. If you lose that aspect, does the gain on sleep actually make a difference? So that clearly came through. However, even though the strong opposition looks overwhelming, when you disaggregate by stakeholder group, there is one particular stakeholder group that really wants to get rid of early dismissal Wednesdays. Can anyone guess what that is? Which parents more particularly? Elementary parents. So when you disaggregate the results for the Wednesday adjustment, you can see that parents overwhelmingly support eliminating early dismissal Wednesday.
Which is called your schedule alignment, right? Those two things mean the same thing?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, this is, I will confess, this is, I've been toying with artificial intelligence to help generate prettier slides, and sometimes it does a little funny things with the labels. I'm figuring that right out, I know, I'm transparent here. But you can see that student opposition when you start adding the students in, right, very overwhelmingly opposed. But you can see again here, parents are overwhelmingly supportive of eliminating early dismissal at both Lane and Davis. You can see staff are more evenly split, more opposed than supported, but not nearly in a bifurcated way as students. When you get up to the middle and the high school, you can still see the strong support from parents on early dismissal. Again, mixed sort of support among staff, and then very, very strong opposition, obviously, you can see from students. And the same thing with BHF, though you can see the parent opposition to or support for early dismissal being eliminated is more muted in the BHS situation, served data, as well as for staff. Staff are overwhelmingly opposed at BHS to losing early dismissal Wednesdays. I think some key findings is that there is a divide between parents and the other stakeholder groups. If you recall why this issue came up in the first place, it was not something that I was intending to put into place as part of my, if you will, platform coming in as superintendent. It emerged organically from conversations primarily with parents during my entry process. And that it was also the constituency group that advocated, I think strongly along with the Board of Health for us to consider this very seriously. But you can see that in the other categories, there is net opposition around many elements of the proposals. And limited willingness to prioritize budgetary sacrifices to implement either one of these options. One last thing that we analyzed, again, artificial intelligence actually makes this more easy to do, is we have an unusually high, I think, a number of parents who are also staff. So I extracted the dual perspectives on staff who are also parents, and there are 37 of them, to see what they thought. And I think this is a very good microcosm of the fact that there is no consensus. So you can see that there's very strong opposition to the early dismissal Wednesday, much more strong opposition or support than somewhat opposition or support. And they prefer option A over B, but the other is primarily, again, no change. But you can see the results are different and no strong consensus emerges. That is a snapshot of the entire survey data set, where the bottom line is no option A or B or other has garnered sufficient support for us to feel like it's worth moving forward with a lot of energy. So we're here tonight to get some more feedback, and I think Stephanie, Liz, and Julie for previous time. Marion too, I forgot, she had 6 members here. Those student be student member. We have some thoughts. I think before we enter discussion, I did want to also highlight in the memo, not in the presentation, every working group member interviewed a different district. And there were some interesting insights there. I think the biggest insight was that the wellness benefits were mixed at best. In terms of, especially when weighing it for logistical challenges. And what came through pretty clearly, which I think also comes through in the survey results, is that pushing much past 8:30 towards the 9 o'clock start time for high school, the downstream impacts in the after school space are not worth the sort of whatever gain might get to sleep. I think it was your, how did they describe it, Alexis?
That as soon as the bell rings, everyone is gone. There's no like whole community. There used to be like a, 15-20 minutes between sports and clubs starting and the bell there where kids would seek out teachers, where they would like socialize together. It was like a little bit more of a community in that. And it is true, it goes down within about 2 minutes.
Amherst, I talked to Amherst and they also are actually proposing to pull back from 9 o'clock to 8:30 for that reason, because it really decimated some of the after school activities seen, and parents and students have shared that actually negatively. So there's a little bit more there in the memo. And then the last piece I wanted to highlight is we did engage with the Sleep Start School Later National Organization, which supports districts around the country that are making the shift. I would say that for the most part, we're doing everything that a district should be doing as they consider a shift like this. But there was a tidbit of research that I thought was helpful for us to think about as we potentially explore a different way forward. And that is that 20 minutes matters. So even though there is a American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation to get to 8:30, even a change of 20 minutes, there's some research backing that can help with sleep. If you recall in the history of Bedford, we did already move by 20 minutes or so. Was it 7:15, Liz?
I think we moved a half hour.
Okay, maybe even a half hour, but I think we got to 7:50 and then we had to pull back to 7:45 or 7:40. But if we were able to make another shift of 20 minutes, that could be is meaningful with respect to sleep. And may give us more opportunity and options to consider ways to mitigate some of the concerns that have been raised by students and stakeholders and staff. So I'll stop there, and Stephanie, Liz, Julie, Marianne are here as well to answer questions. And we also have some thoughts about potentially a way forward, but we'd love to hear your feedback and questions.
Great, thank you. And thank you everyone for being here today. We'll go to Kim first.
Yeah, I'm sure none of this is surprising if you have children, especially in the school, because I think this is the same exact argument that I have with my high school age son every day. He vehemently opposes, I vehemently support, and I'm not sure we'll ever find a happy medium. But I will say that it's very clear looking at the details and nuance that have also sort of been derived from this exercise that we're not done. We don't know what to do. Hopefully we heard the student voices today that there are maybe other options out there that we should consider. I don't know if, at what point or how to differently get people engaged that aren't participating in this. I understand we sort of strong-armed a lot of our students into participating in the survey, but I know when it comes time to make a decision, a lot of people will have the reality of the implications of that decision sort of put in front of them. And it would be really interesting to find some more creative ways to get ideas, thoughts, or maybe even proposals from other stakeholder groups that aren't so engaged right now. So I don't have any more specific thoughts or feedback other than I'm fighting this fight in my own house, so I know what's ahead. But hopefully we can get creative and get more work, into this because the devil's in the details, as we've said all along. We know what's right and healthy, but we also have to find a way to make sure that we've left no stone unturned and figuring out the right ways to implement and appease.
Great, thank you, Kim. Angel.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if I guess I have one question being, I know, you closed the survey. I guess I'm interested, what type of feedback did you get from the working group, right? Like they've seen this data. I'm interested to hear kind of from the group's perspective, like what is both the results and or paths forward kind of, what are the initial reactions, I guess, is something I'd be interested to hear about.
So, I do feel like I should have to do this because I was one of those very vehement, we have to do this people. I think, Angel, for me, it was when we reached out to all these districts, it was very clear. There was, obviously there were people who came to the table because they feel including myself, felt very passionately, this is the right thing we should be doing. We have to get our kids to school later. It's what the science says.
And so it was like very like focused. And then we started reaching out to the other districts, which maybe in hindsight we should have done earlier. And I was expecting there to be like yes, this has been awesome. And like maybe it was bumpy and of course kids didn't want it, but like it's been great and we've seen X, Y, and Z and it's been none of it was very, and I talked to the district I work in, I talked to Lexington, other people talked to different districts. And all of us came back with this sort of like, meh, like maybe it's okay, like, and we asked very clear questions, like, would you do it again? I mean, like, there was no one who was, maybe there's one district that came back at COVID, so they were just excited to go back to school, and they're the only district that. No, it wasn't it? No, Lexington was way back. Yeah, so they like came back that year, and so they managed to roll it all into the re-entry, and so like everyone was just excited to go back to school, and no one, so that was the only one. Everyone else, we came back, and each district had its own unique challenges, as you'd expect. But there really wasn't a single one where it was like, yeah, this was totally the right thing to do, and everyone is happy, and that we pushed through it. And I think that there were a lot of things that I hadn't thought of that came to light, and like one of them is this idea of how the after school is affected, that wellness piece of like kids being able to socialize after school. One district said that like they lost all their clubs because it went later, and one district was so there's all these different, I mean, there's the cost pieces too, but it became, I think the charge that we were very clear about, that I wasn't wrong. But at the moment, it was like, we have to like look into this, and I feel like we did. It was the right thing to do, just like the right thing to do is to like not eat any candy and to get 8 hours of sleep and to like eat a balanced diet, but like, we all kind of cheat on that too. Like, it's clearly the right thing to do, but it's in isolation, and this isn't in isolation. And so I think once you start considering all those other dimensions, I feel like I can speak for the committee when we realize like, this is like a piece of a bigger piece. I wish that we lived in California and we didn't have to chase sunshine. I wish that, that sports wouldn't be impacted because we have all the field lighting and space in the world, and, we have wonderful weather. We don't. And the challenges of doing it in our climate with the time zone we're in and like all those things like that beat us against that wall. So then we have to lose Wednesdays, or else we can't get kids out to sports. And then once you lose Wednesdays, because I was like, elementary school parents are gonna be psyched, and they were, but I didn't realize how much there'd be pushback there would be on losing the Wednesdays. And then that was a healthy thing too. And then it all became more complicated. So I think that we all came to this realization where it's like, we can't think of this in isolation. Like, if you look at it as just like, is it the right thing by itself? Yes, of course it is. But ... like, there's a lot more going on, and I think we all know that we're not done.
Can I put you on a spot list to talk about the tech issue? Because that's something I should want to look back into the raw data. But independent, sort of simultaneous to the work on the healthy school hours, many parents and staff have reached out this fall about, can we do something about access to tech and social media addiction or device addiction? This runs into the actual more likely legislative possibility of California bans. But it's not just about cell phones, it's really about just sort of access to tech and screen time. So I think when we first started entertaining this question, it was raised it as an issue, but you want to give some more texture to that?
Yeah, I think when we started, we were focused solely, as we said, solely on start time. Which we did 11 years ago. So arguably we were ahead of the, we did this a long time ago, but it's still a thing. But I think that then there was a lot of feeling of it, if we're looking at overall student health and wellness, you also need to think about tech, and you need to think about mental health. And tech has become a bigger and bigger issue, certainly at the middle school over the past few years. We implemented Chromebooks at the middle school during COVID because we needed to. And so we never really consciously as a staff made a decision. I do remember probably 10 years ago, I was on school council and we consciously made a decision not to do one-to-one. It was actually a vote by the school council. But during COVID, we had no choice. And then it just kind of became the standard and we never really thought through it. So I think, you know, whatever we are 4 years later, there's a lot of feelings around that. And I think there's also, even in the past year, more thoughts about mental health and unstructured time and freedom and independence for children. And Wednesdays give certainly the middle schoolers all of that. And so I think when you start thinking about really what are the issues in the last year or two that have really come out about student well-being, it's not just sleep, it's also tech and how to handle that, and mental health and what to do about that. So it feels like it's a bigger issue than just what time they wake up in the morning.
And can I just add, to be clear, the tech, so this is school committee, obviously, like, parents will have reign over their phones and their kids having their own phones. Like, this is more like we're giving our kids, well, like, fully equipped devices that they get to take home in school. And I can speak personally that, like, I can lock down my kids' phones and make them go off at 10 or whatever, but then they just sit there on their school issued Chromebooks and they do whatever they want until whatever. So I think that's, like, in particular the piece. And when, and anecdotally, like, talking about this, there were parents originally who were like, this, like, school start time's not really the issue. The issue is the kids are on their cell phones late at night or on a tech, like, so there is, that has been, I think it's come up more this year, but since the beginning, that's been a piece of it.
Yeah, and I can add, as I've been a 7th grade teacher for a long time, the past 2 years, and certainly this year a lot, I have found a huge number of students who do not own their own phone. That's new. My students have always had phones. If they might have been flip phones 15 years ago, but they've always had phones. And so parents are making a conscious choice. And I think that's showing parents awareness of this whole issue and how they're handling it at home. And I think we need to also broaden it a little bit to include all of that. But that's definitely a change, a very new change that I've seen with students, so.
Angel or so.
Okay, yeah, I just wasn't sure everybody was done speaking, so I guess my other, I guess, you know, this next meeting's March 5th. I mean, Cliff, you just brought this up. I guess the answer question is why? What's, are you proposing something? Are you like, what's the?
We have the working group has some ideas, but as I mentioned at the start of the meeting, I'm in the next few days going to be appointing a SHSHSD working group. Student Healthy School Hours Snow Day Working Group. And I am very eager to hear from students about their ideas. So I am actually not prepared to make a recommendation because I would like to talk with students directly. We had 23 applicants. That's a little bit too big of a group to sort of effectively work. Actually, it's interesting contrast because we have a 22-member anti-hate bias task force and a 10-member Healthy School Hours working group. Both are great, but endpoint differs when we have a lot of groups. So long story short, I'm going to be working with Dr. Williamson to appoint that group. We'll probably have our first meeting the week after October break during Flex. So I would like to ensure that their voices are integrated into whatever the working group does on March 5th. And I might insist that a representative from that student working group joins the Healthy School Hours Working Group and override the original opposition to student participation in both the working group and the task force. I'll have it be known. So we do have some ideas, but I think we're gonna wanna loop in the students directly before we present sort of anything formal as a larger working group.
Okay. I mean, I think the only other thing that I'll say is that I think we've oftentimes talked about that it's not just either or, that there's an and component to this, but it sounds like we haven't gotten to the place where it'll make sense for everyone. And again, I have faith that this group is comprised of lots of intelligent people that are going to figure out other options that may both find a way to, you know, get these programs still running the way people would like them. You know, again, it's impossible to expect for 100% of the people to be happy. That's just, it's not realistic. but there's a place, right, where both some version of the times and some of the flexibility that we built into what our policy is can still align with making sure that the extracurriculars and the athletics and the enrichment programs are all that are essential, right, to student growth and connection are still going to be available and are still going to be, something that people can rely on within the district. So I guess we will wait until March and hear what the next steps are.
Thank you, Eva.
Thank you so much. I think the word of the school committee for me the last year is nuance. I think that everything that we've been dealing with, it's just so gray. In this especially, I mean, that's what you're saying, is that you think it's like so right and wrong, and then you open it up and then you realize how gray it is in between, which I totally sympathize with and understand. And yeah, we've gone over logistics for years at this point. But I do like the idea that if we, like, I am worried about the athletics in the afternoon and that time in the afternoon, whatever it is. And if we eliminate Wednesdays, that would give us a little bit more flexibility there. At our last meeting 2 weeks ago, I was all excited about the idea that the district could turn off the Chromebooks and I got pushback from that, but I'll say it again, I think that's a great idea if we can, and it will, yeah, I think that all change is hard. I mean, we earlier this meeting, the changing of staff, everything is hard, but I mean, I've also learned that with the school committee that with change comes good things. So I think I'm glad that we have a good group that's dedicated to this and is working on it, and I'm eager to hear the students' perspective. I think Jessie probably will have, she better be one of those small, like the eliminated, the narrow down group. She'll have some good ideas, especially as a student out there. Yeah. Who plays on a field. I think that's important.
Jessie may be here.
Yes, or on an ice rink, I should say, anything that's like, or a swimming pool, or anything that has like,
And that's some of the nuance that came up even within that, so like districts, we were asked, all the districts do a great job too about the impact on sports, because obviously we're concerned about it. And I can't remember which one it was, but it was like, they didn't want anything before school because they thought that would defeat the purpose. Except they had to let it go for hockey because there was no way you could get break time from it. And, and then I'm sure there's swimming if we had, like, so I think even it's like you want it to be easy and you want it to just be like, no problem, like we'll just, and I certainly didn't, I'm very much, I don't know anything about sports. My girls all dance at studios. I can tell you all about dance competitions. I can't tell you anything about sports, but like, I thought like, well, who cares? Like it's 10 minutes like later, but then, very quickly I learned like, well, you have to get here and this team needs that. And then there's refs and there's this, and it was so much more complicated such that just 20 minutes could mean, like 45 minutes sitting in traffic or whatever it is.
We're this lovely small district, we co-op with a lot of programs too.
Yep, and so it's just all so much more complicated, and it's not that we can't solve the problems, like I think we can't solve the problems, and if the charge from the school committee eventually is like, yep, we hear all this, we still need you to get start times to 8 or whatever, we can give you our best answer and like advise our best answer. I think that what we're trying to convey today is like, we might need some more information and you might have a lot more to consider than we thought there was originally.
Thank you very much, that's all.
Brad.
First of all, thank you to the Healthy School Hours for all the hard work you've been doing. This is really fabulous and I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into this. I got one quick methodological question about the survey. So Cliff, you said we sort of made all the students do it, right? How did we do that? What was?
So in fifth grade.
The reason I'm asking the question is I'm trying to get a sense of whether the students actually independently answered these questions and we can sort of. Yeah.
So like we did last time, we asked the fifth grade teachers to give classroom time for it, and in GGMS they did during advisory, and at DHS they did during advisory. So I think
discussions about this before they did the surveys.
So last year we did pre-seed the survey with each principal handled it differently in terms of the video message. This year, we asked, the advisors and the teachers to show the video ahead of the survey. So the video was the educational tool. The video was not perfect, but, it was, designed to ensure that they were receiving the survey after they watched the video. Which I will say that, some members of the community, communicated, said, I don't like this or that, and then, I said, did you watch the video? They said no, so we tried to force people to watch the video before they took the survey, but, we will. But with students, it was more structured, in terms of the administration.
I guess what I'm hearing tonight is sort of an inconsistency that we have discovered, which is that the rigorous science from the people who have the PhDs after their names says this is the right thing to do. And the anecdotal evidence, anybody who's tried to do it, is things like the wellness benefits aren't there, okay? I'm a scientist at heart, so when I hear something like that, I want to ask why there is an inconsistency. What are the nuances of all these places that said it didn't work? And are those nuances, and how do they apply to Bedford? Like, because the scientists did do the study in Bedford, and we care about Bedford, we don't care about what's published science, right? So there's, I guess what I'm getting at is, I think that some of the work that needs to be done now is to really carefully unpack the anecdotal things that we've heard from these other districts and explain why it's different. Like, what was different in that town that made it not work? And what was different in that town that made it not work, and so on. And if the compelling answer is it's different, it's said, we're more like this than like the science that, well, this other stuff was based on. And that's something we need to know.
So I wish that someone from Board of Health was here, but they're not. But I think one of the things that became clear, and actually I think it was the principal or someone I talked to at my high school, was like, well, we're really following the science. We'd start school at 10 o'clock in the morning, because that's when their brains truly turn on. And which I think, I can't remember. I remember I definitely read it last year, but like, I think it is like, it's that later time. Now, they said at least get it to at least 8:30, that's like when you start seeing benefits. But if we were really gonna do exactly what they, like with the science dictates, I think we'd be pushing it much later. Obviously, we can't do it. It's a non-starter, like pretty much anything, any district that went to 9, it's like they want to pull back to 8:30, because that's too much because of the impact later on. Again, if we live somewhere, if we live near the equator and we had tons of sunshine every day, I think that might not be the case, but we don't. So I think that it's this, what I kept feeling, and I was like very ardently like striking, like we have to do this. I was mad at Cliff because he told me it was going to take longer than I wanted it to take, not just Cliff, everyone else except for me. Like, I was really ardent, but now when you look at it, it's like, well, if we can't go all the way, like, then you start saying, okay, so we shave it down, we're gonna get to at least 8:30, but then what costs what has happened, not just like financial costs, which that is obviously a concern, but like, what has that cost us in all these other things that are related to wellness? And like, if we were going to 10, maybe it'd be worth it, because that's really when those kids get to sleep, and that's perfect. But if we're only at 8:30, like, are we really, like, is that gonna be, so I think it becomes this like much more nuanced cost benefit analysis. And I think that the research that we had, a lot of it coming from California, which again, very sunny, didn't allow us to sort of think about it here. I think we were trying to extrapolate from like that state's experience where they just mandated it. Everyone had to do it. So there was no, they didn't care about, I mean, I'm sure they did, but they didn't like have to go through all these details, but like all the sports teams, everything had to go at once, the whole thing.
And I think that is something that is under sort of valued in this conversation, which is, the Middlesex League, we're part of Jewel County League, but a group, Burlington's part of that, league, Winchester's part of the league, and they made a pact. They were all gonna do this at the same time, so that the sports teams and everything would align, so one by one, they fell, like flies because of sort of local opposition. Some did end up making a change. Burlington made a change, but a more modest change, which is why they're okay with where they landed, although they didn't necessarily address the other schools' times, right? But I think when you have a statewide initiative, everyone has to align the logistics. And there's no, there's no dissonance in terms of the advantages or disadvantages in terms of time. The whole ecosystem, jobs, after school sports, childcare, the whole ecosystem has to adapt, so your town is not at a relative disadvantage. So I think that is part of the dynamic in Massachusetts where we're local control, which does huge, strong benefit. But in a systems change like that, like this, where there are not other systems that are aligned, the logistical and other impacts on wellness may not outweigh or may outweigh the benefits of the incremental benefits of sleep. So I think part of what we have to look deeply into is certain shifts. It's not just about the absolute time of shift, but it's also its relative position with respect to the other schools or the other activities. So particularly childcare. Once you flip elementary to before secondary, you automatically create a cascade of childcare issues, right? So that's something we might need to look at, which is, do we try to avoid that whole cascade, right? And so there's a number of new ways I think we can look at it, but I think the working group wants to make sure we're not tilting at windmills. I mean, we're gonna spend our energy on it, which is where this discussion is towards now.
Okay. I guess I'm suggesting there is a little more juice to be squeezed out of the experiences of the local districts that can give us insights into what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, we have a lot of data, we have a lot
Yeah.
of data.
And that's all I have. Thanks.
And now we know people to go back to as well, so if there's further questions, we can actually. go
We have
back
a
to
very
that.
nice subset of districts that are like enough to us
Yeah, that'd be
and
fun.
recent enough, that we can avoid the things that they wish they had avoided.
Yeah, I'm done.
All right, great. Thank you. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you for all this information. I guess first to follow up on what Brad was saying, I was gonna say the same thing. I think we could get a little more out of these districts because it's informative. And, you know, I've been sort of way circled on my page here, like it adds to the discussion and it doesn't mean that we have to do it exactly the way we're, I think, known for doing things a little bit of our own way, in a positive manner. So I think we could get as much as we can, and I'm interested to see what the option C or other would look like, without committing to anything. A couple of comments, because I received tremendous amount of community feedback, either individually or throughout the committee, which I shared, is the Wednesday advantages for keeping that early release. And I know you mentioned the structured social time, mental health benefits. Other things just to add to the conversation, which probably been made aware of, are a lot of parents schedule recurring appointments on Wednesdays. And that was something that came up quite a bit about the ability for families to have those recurring appointments that are very difficult to get.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I have to tell you a funny story. I was at the orthodontist, Dr. Husby, and something came up and I mentioned about Wednesdays, and they were so worried that we were gonna pull early Wednesdays because that is the longest, like, that's when all of their orthodontist appointments are. And that's just a small, obviously, and I was like, you guys will adjust, you'll be fine, but yeah, I think that's.
But I think a lot of parents, schedule appointments on Wednesdays, recurring ones, acute ones, you know, that's a big day for it. Also, it's additional time for students who work to get those extra hours, which I think is important to acknowledge. And also that it's a catch-up time for students to study or do homework, which actually leads to more sleep. I think. But it's, you know, by allowing folks to that midweek break to do their homework, catch up on things, it actually lets them not do it late at night. So for what that's worth, those were raised to me multiple times by multiple stakeholders in this over the last week or two. Going on, as far as the parent groups here, do you feel comfortable that you had a good sampling? Did you get parents from Hanscom and families in Boston, working parents, multi-generational, like is there any data about parents who responded to this, or do we need to find more data about parents?
So we were able to disaggregate by school. There was already like, I don't know, 20 categories of disaggregation. And this time we did not disaggregate by Boston or Hanscom, but we are engaging in sort of more real-time discussions. And the Hanscom feedback, many thanks to Kim, who was engaged earlier this fall, is more aligned, I think, with the Bedford feedback, Boston feedback. The message is very clear in terms of the cascading impacts. So we will continue to engage. I, actually am trying to ensure that there's at least a Hanscom rep and a Boston rep on the student working group as well. So, you know, we had 500 parents respond. That's, I think last I checked, we have 1,600 unique parents. So it's not quite as strong, obviously, as the staff or student response rates. But given the other anecdotal information that we've received through committee members or others, I think it's fairly representative. I would say the one issue that I think it would be helpful for the working group to get specific direction on is the Wednesday issue from a standpoint. So when you take it in the aggregate, there is overwhelming opposition, right, to eliminating early dismissal. But when you look at the parent subgroup alone, there's overwhelming support, particularly the elementary level. I don't know if that's worth unpacking. I think the logical sort of through line there is childcare, particularly elementary, but I haven't heard honestly as much from parents who are advocating to eliminate early dismissal Wednesday in terms of actual discussions or conversations. I've only heard sort of the latter. I don't know if anyone on the working group or on the committee has heard about that issue, so that might be worth unpacking, and I'm going to look at Wendy as the best president about whether or not that's worth the discussion. And I'll talk to Rob Ackerman and Jess Colby about the school councils maybe having them have a conversation to say, this was a very disparate data point. How big of an issue is that? My gut sense is that people have figured that piece out and that there are structures in Bedford that have accommodated this early Wednesday, and though it would be nice to not have to figure it out. You know, that people have figured out the current structure. So that's a design parameter, which is very important to know, which is, are we preserving early dismissal Wednesdays in some form? There was some initial discussion about secondary versus elementary, because, for example, Lexington has it for elementary, but not secondary. However, when you look at the results, the opposition was stronger at second, right, from students and parents and staff.
I think we've also asked to like, does it need to be every week? Is it every other week? Like, so I think that is, because when you put up, like, I can't remember, it was like, if we kept Wednesdays as they were, the end times, it was like a non-starter. Like, it would have been so late, and then, you know, I don't know if anyone plays a sport or has a job, it was not, so it's like we had to eliminate Wednesdays so that you could bring that end time down, you'd like distribute that time and make it more manageable.
So that was with the design parameter of getting to 30, right? So based on this conversation, if we relax that design parameter, but preserve, prioritize early dismissal Wednesdays as a new design parameter, we can go back to try to craft a both and solution that gets some of the benefit of sleep improvement, but doesn't lose some of the other benefits that currently people are feeling might be lost. And this again, where I think students are gonna have some good ideas about how to spread that news.
And one thing I think, I don't know how many people in the town appreciate, is that I think we are a little rare in still having weekly early dismissals at all levels. I think, I'm not wrong, I think most districts have either eliminated it entirely or like it's in some modified form, so I think Bedford way, yes, and, but I think that that's part of why it took us all by surprise, that like, but everyone else has done this, why is, you know, but maybe that's, we should.
They like it, and I do think, like, I think Burlington's union is trying to negotiate it in to their contract, because they've heard the benefits of it, so it cuts both ways, right, in terms of, so it is something that's very unique, but that might be part of why people like.
Why it would be harder,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. A question about the student working group. Is it all BHS students or are you bringing in middle school students?
So right, the initial outreach was BHS. I had talked with Principal Hartunian about establishing the middle school one as well. But I'm trying to get the BHS one up and running first. I actually am interested, probably going forward, to have a joint structure of a student advisory group on all topics that would be adjunct to the student representative as a structure going forward. But that's something I stay on to the fall. But I would ideally, although I think logistically this is gonna be impossible, to have a fifth grader at Lane. So what I imagine is that we would be able to figure out co-meeting times with JMS and DHS students. And then I would continue to engage with the Lane fifth grade student council, sort of separately, the schedules would work in proximity. But I do think there's a lot of power to the multiple perspectives across the age range, as these are district-wide impacts, and we've seen this, I think Kelly and Marianne and Julie can attest to this, that when we have working groups of educators that cross schools, the conversation get more nuanced, because they actually have to weigh the needs of their colleagues that, you know, for example, when you talk about appointments in the afternoon hours, when you tell that to a Davis teacher, they're gonna be like, I'm never gonna be able to have an appointment for 4 o'clock, right? So it helps people to remember that they're district-wide cascade, and then the work becomes more nuanced and collaborative because everyone has to weigh everyone else's needs. So I'm looking forward to engaging more deeply with students, but across the grade span.
Thank you. And then one other comment related to something Sarah said about technology generally, and something Stephanie said about her own ability to turn off devices. I wonder if there's a way to allow parents the ability to turn off school issued devices rather than the school making that decision.
Yes. We are exploring all avenues. We do have a new IT director, Vlad, I'm gonna say Vlad, Impulse. And we are looking into definitely a much faster track, the possibility for parents to make a choice about school issue devices. But I do think there is advocacy for sort of a discussion around whether there's when we issue devices, for example, right at work grade level, and whether there are parameters around so the use of that school device.
And do they need to come home? And how much work should be assigned on them versus like having options if you don't like, some parents might not want their sixth grader to come home with their Chromebook every day, right? I mean, so I think, and I know it's tough because teachers adapted and they start doing everything, but I think it's a bigger discussion to sort of try to strike that balance a bit better, so that kids can be off their.
And so I would say that's another sort of discussion from a design parameter standpoint that we could try to hone in on the must-haves in terms of the time issue. But I think there was some interest among the members of the group to say that if you solve the time issue, but you don't address the tech issue and you don't address the wellness issue, mental health issue holistically, you might have moved a little forward and then move a little back. So that might be another discussion in terms of looking at those issues simultaneously and coming forward with a sort of more broader based set of recommendations for consideration, which might impact our acceptable use and technology guidelines, which are under development as well. So we could dovetail those sort of processes if that is of interest in terms of what we tackle and how we tackle it. But I do think there was appetite amongst, correct me if I'm wrong, knowing that that would be a larger endeavor, but perhaps embracing the nuance is actually more efficient than trying to discreetly address questions.
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted to raise, I think I'm sure might be, but was re-engaging Affordable Health as well and asking them like to think more, because they were obviously very strongly for this. We hadn't even heard of it until they started talking about it. So re-engaging them and be like, okay, here are all these different things that we're hearing have to do with health. Can you help us like balance them? Like what, because, and if they say like, what sleep trumps it all, then that's fine. But I think we need to hear that from them because they have expertise that we don't.
No, I agree with that. I think we're tapping into the resources for all of our, boards and members and community makes a lot of sense in this instance and typically does. So, I don't have any other questions. I know there's nothing to vote on, but is there anything else you need from, or Stephanie, that you need from us tonight before we do?
I think the only thing is what I'm hearing and gleaning from the discussion is that there is no additional directive to sort of pursue option A or option B and how to implement it. That instead, the committee is okay with the working group exploring a to be determined option C. Or what we talked about, I think colloquially, I started calling it option C plus, which is the plus, the other wellness thing. But looking at broadening the design parameters, is a okay way to engage the group as opposed to continuing on the path of one or the other to engage that.
Can I
That's what
say something real quick?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
So you don't actually need us for that because I think we built the policy specifically to allow for you to come back and say, hey, A and B doesn't work at 8:30, but at 8:22 or at 8:19, this actually does in fact work. Like that's kind of why we structured it the way we did. So
Yeah, no, I know we don't officially need to, but I would feel better about spending the time of the working group and especially engaging the students with a sort of as explicit of a sort of permission, if you will, to explore option C and to maybe not fully abandon, but abandon, well, I guess maybe abandon option A and B for now, table option A and B. In terms of the energy of both the existing Healthy School Hours Working Group and the emerging student one. I just don't want the expectation to be in March 5th would come back with refined way to do option A, for example. I'm hearing that an option C, which is well within the parameter of wellness policy, and working towards a new option or two is aligned with what this discussion would. I'm saying nodding.
Yeah, I think for myself, it's nice to get sort of, to give you all a heads up, we wanted you to understand why A and B maybe we can't like come full charging, charging in and being like, A is the winner, you should totally do this A thing, like. I wanted you to understand that all this other nuance or word of the night has come out, and so. Hence C, so I understand, I mean, honestly, I was really worried about making Angel very sad, because I know how passionate he is about this. So it's more, I think, just sort of getting that, like, letting you know, like, we tried, this is our best for that parameter of 8:30. We think that there's collectively a lot more that needs to be unpacked, and like, we're trying not to let you go. I think it's sort of like, we're trying, we don't need to think we gave up on what we're supposed to be
no,
doing.
I understand that, but I also would just for in fairness, let's categorize this appropriately. It's not just that I'm only passionate about it. Your own data shows that there's lots and lots of parents, right, that very strongly support this. So I'm the most vocal person because I'm the one that's sitting here, but there's clear data that shows there's tons and tons of parents and families that actually are in support of this. So let's not make it all just about me and what I care about. It's actually right that there's
I didn't it's not like that, I apologize.
right. So I know, but it's what gets out there in the public. So I just want to clarify, please. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know if we're trying to go around to say yes, keep exploring. Yes, keep exploring. Like I think it's, those two options don't seem to resonate for a lot of reasons. Again, I think, good, bad, or indifferent. I would imagine that most of the people involved in the we should eliminate Wednesdays did not believe that it would be such a hot fire topic originally, and it became that. And so if that's something that the community feels so strongly about can't go away, right, then it sounds like option C or even D, right, need to come up that now don't necessarily eliminate those things. So yeah, so keep pursuing, I guess, is my vote, if you will.
All right.
Thanks, Angel. Just so we don't, Kim, do you have I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry, Kim.
Else
That's okay.
you wanted.
I'm still here. No, I think, yeah, there's nothing more I have to add. Thank you, though.
Sure.
Yeah, new ones.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think, taking that, continuing to look into other alternatives for staying put makes sense to me. Or just continuing to look at things outside of A and B, if that's the question.
Yes. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Working group. Moving on, our next agenda item is the fiscal year 26 superintendent goals and for 2020. Plan under trust.
I will make this quick. It is fully articulated in your packets, and I can, quickly.
You sure we have something?
Seconds. So, as you may recall, my goals, I had two goals this year that were very similar to the way I structured the goals, last year. The first goal being to specifically address, the areas of improvement that were identified by the committee in my, evaluation at the end of fiscal 25. And the second goal being to execute on the strategic plan year 2 action plan. Which embeds basically goal 1, but I highlight specifically some of the elements in goal 1. Specific because of the evaluation comment. So we are keeping our eyes on the ball in terms of reaching our goals and being aligned with our vision and mission and our core values. This is a high level one snapshot summary of our assessment of where we stand in all of our key initiatives and projects in our 3 areas of the strategic plan. Green being on track, yellow being moving towards completion, but needing some minor adjustments, and red being on track, which I'm happy to report that in an assessment of the leadership team, we are not off track in any particular area. You can see some areas where we do need some alignment and adjustments, and those are more fully detailed in the narrative within the full report, which will be posted online tomorrow, as it always is, the day after the committee. So as a highlight, literacy and the math and literacy objectives in our first boost category are on track. We have data for outcome measures from 2025 focused on SGP, showing particularly in PLA that we are close to the 55 mark that we set for ourselves in grade 4 and above in grade 5. We are still working on that middle school transition in terms of literacy and the adaptive curriculum in grade 6. We are on track to extend access to academically advanced math, particularly in the way that we structured 8th grade algebra 1. And we are in the early stages of implementation on the grade 6 shift that we made last year. We are working on an MTSS framework, but there are some adjustments in terms of consistency, and we're waiting on feedback from the best review that was conducted last month. We are actively working on addressing some of the issues in our data dashboards with Open Architects. Had a great meeting with them last week to re-engage on that. And we are on track in terms of embedding our direct student supports in our teaching models for both students with disabilities and the English learners. You heard earlier tonight about some of the changes in the world language department, but specifically the CallLab initiative to expand access to additional languages. We have 18 students enrolled in that new course structure with Mandarin, German, Russian, and Italian now being offered for the first time in Bedford Public Schools. Adam and team have even experimented with a peer native language tutoring component that's being piloted to enhance the experience students in online structure. We're also successfully piloted a course acceleration in mathematics at the high school. Again, part of the strategic ability to boost our commitment to boost every learner, even wherever they are on in terms of needing support or needing challenge. And we are working, we are engaged in the advanced learning pilot at Lane School for access to advanced opportunities for students at Lane School. Dr. Williamson went to a professional development today on it. So we're on track with respect to the participation initiative, but we are continuing to determine how best it would work for Bedford to ensure that we're able to maximize our teachers' time in terms of accelerating enrichment opportunities for students so that is an area that we're looking actively into. In the second, promote well-being, category, you just heard a whole bunch about school hours, it is on track, even though nuanced, it is on track. We have made some adjustments in terms of our approach to the Unified District Handbook, which we will be hearing about more later this fall. And our anti-hate task force, along with some refresh of our section 504 processes are well underway. Our mental health partnerships continue. We did administer our first baseline data for school climate survey, and we scored very well, district-wide and across the schools. In the aggregate, you can see the results district-wide. Anything above the 3 is very strong. I forget, Kelly, is it a strongly agree or a often, always often, always often?
Agree and strongly agree.
Okay, so it's very positive in terms of the sort of overall data. Each school does have areas of growth that we are working on with the principals. We have determined, just by way of transparency, that given the strength of the baseline data and the time we need to sort of work through some of the areas of improvement, we don't think we need to do it twice a year, probably annual administration. Had the results been less strong, we probably would have reassessed, but this has validated a lot of the strengths that we see for schools already. And both the restorative practices underway at JGMS as well as at the high school are also on track. In our last area of strengthening our teams and systems, our fiscal control structure is underway and being implemented with fidelity thanks to Julie, I believe. You may recall that we finalized the resource allocation class size and caseload guidelines as well in November, which is being used to guide our discussions for resource allocation for the budget. In our Q2 report, you can see that we are within our budgetary parameters, below the $350,000 draw on the special stabilization fund that we had approved as part of the fiscal 26 budget. We are actively working to push that number down. But as Marianne can attest, was it yesterday afternoon, we had some good news, and then literally like
3 minutes
3
later.
minutes later, we had some bad news. So it's up and down. We think we're making traction, and then there's another situation. So we're still within those parameters, but we're hoping when we come to Q3 that red bar will be lower. I did want to update you that despite we have repeatedly worked with town manager Hanson to ask the Department of Revenue to conduct that review that they the board, this school committee and the board asked for, and DRR has been unresponsive. At this point, Julie and I have determined that we can't really wait for them, so we anticipate moving forward with our own policy review. And probably will bring forward the first read of those policies for the committee at Q3. If and when the Department of Revenue decides that they can engage, we can obviously take their feedback and enhance whatever we decide to do, but we feel like we've built sufficient systems and controls and have bigger resources in the form of the MASC model policies that we can proceed without that review. We're not sure what else we can do because we can't tell DRR to conduct that review. So that is why it's yellow, but we're going to proceed and bring back the policies without that review having been completed. You just heard that we secured a $70,000 grant to accelerate our work with educator diversification, so that's on track. Our rounds are underway and on track. We are taking a little bit of a slower look at the acceptable use policies on track for consideration in the spring, but we are taking a little bit of a pause on the tech guidelines, largely due to the transition in our IT director, but also because AI keeps moving so quickly that we want to make sure that we are getting the best information as the state comes out with more guidance around that. Our Boston Medco enrollment process is on track, and one other bonus as part of our stretch goal is we have successfully migrated the vast majority of payment collection from cash and check to the online pay system. 143 grand out of the 183 grand we've collected so far, which is a good sign for our fee collection process this fall. It very much reduces the administrative burden on administrative staff, and is also much more secure. Because you can't use but you can check for cash. So there you have it. The majority of our strategic initiatives are on track. We identified the ones that are off track with additional detail in the full report. I can go into any questions. Not off track, sorry. Moving in the right direction, moving things elsewhere. Nothing's on track.
Great, okay, thank you. Kim.
I don't have any specific questions. I think this is all promising. Lots of work to be done. I like knowing what's yellow, red, and green. It's encouraging, I guess, to see no red, but as an operations leader myself, it's kind of like really nothing. So I'm glad that you're flagging those yellow things for us and explaining, where moving slow makes sense. But no questions or no elaboration needed.
I will say, Kim, that there were a couple that might have been red when the first draft of this, but then we rectified them, so they are now yellow. Not everything was perfect. It is not perfect. I forgot to mention the one other important one because he was here, but we are very pleased that we are faster on track with the Therapy Dog Initiative and World from Bowler Church event with Dollywood. So I should highlight that as well.
Thank you, Angel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would make that healthy school start times one yellow personally, because I think you still have a lot of work to do in getting that implemented. So, but I don't really have any. I mean, it's pleasing to see that a lot of this work is getting done. It's disappointing about the Department of Revenue just because it was an ask. It's a resource that was provided to us that is not being provided to us, right? Which seems unfortunate because it's our way of we are trying to do our due diligence and do the things that are asked of us, and we can't, right? Because do that. So thank you to Julie. I think Julie might have left, but. And you for just kind of taking your own steps to kind of look at some of those policies and get them situated. And if and when they ever do come through, hopefully then the answer is, oh, you've done what we would have suggested anyway. And we can kind of move forward. So that's all I got for here.
Thanks, Angel. Sarah.
Thank you. I'm glad that we are looking, checking in on initiatives, which I think is like the sixth grade reading was done after COVID, just as their sort of a stop, let's try to fix this now, but I'm glad that it's successful and we're continuing it. And that the middle school math sort of structuring shifts in the calculus project, and we're continuing to look at that and seeing successes and what we can do to make that better. I just paid for, I think Sarah probably did too, I just paid for something with a new money system for the middle school play. It's super easy. It's way better than finding my checkbook and sending it in. So that was great. And I just went to the bathroom and hung out with Bolo for 30 seconds and he's not good. So yeah, so that's what I have. Thank you. Great.
Brad.
Thank you. The DLR review, do we know if they're doing reviews in other districts or are they just not doing this thing?
They just stopped responding at some point. I think they're going through their own capacity challenges. I don't know if I know the answer to that. They just aren't even answering us at all. I mean, town manager Hanson has tried not pestering for the last 2 years. And at this point, I checked in again ahead of the meeting saying anything. He's like, I don't think we can count on them. So.
Okay, I'm interested in getting a bit of a read on staff culture, and I'm not sure what's going on with the staff culture survey. Because your document says it's C23, which is the the school climate survey and that you're not gonna do a staff culture survey this spring.
No, the school climate survey was all 3 stakeholder groups. It's just cross-reference, so we're not repeating, so the final data here. See, stat, 3.25.
Okay, well, yeah, is that, where is this result?
So as we articulated in this outset of the strategic plan, we're not necessarily going to publish all of the results because the intention of this survey was to inform growth. And when you, especially with staff, say that you're gonna publish results, then it changes the sort of dynamic around how the data usage is perceived as more of a public PR kind of thing rather than a proven thing, particularly for building principles, because the data is aggregated at the building level. So you probably don't recall, but I recall we made an intentional shift in the final version of the strategic plan not to have outcome measures that are defined by that survey in order to ensure that it was used as a tool for team improvement. There are disaggregated results. We're still working through how to share them. They do tell different stories depending on the disaggregation. But in terms of aggregate, when you sum across the district, the results are very strong.
Okay, what is that actually in response to? What is the question?
It's the sum, Kelly, it's like, I don't know how many questions it is.
It's a lot of questions. I'm
that's
happy to
not-
share that.
That's not the answer to one question, that's some aggregated version of it. Okay.
Yeah, the instrument is actually you put on the link, so you can see the actual instrument.
Okay.
In terms of the staff instrument, the student instrument, the parent instrument, it's like 20-25 questions. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a little conundrum there about how to make the results visible, I guess. Okay, all right, that's all I got, thank you.
Thanks. I had the same question as Brad, so, and Brad just CC in.
Yeah, I see it.
There, you just clicked on it. I have the same question.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Brad. No.
I did not see this presentation in our packet, so just remember, it's public, it needs to be publicly available.
Yes, I agree. So just again, in transparency, I produced the core documents and then I have been experimenting with artificial intelligence to generate more unique visuals. So that happened that afternoon. So but you can see there's some, I'm still not super satisfied. I probably did this one 4 or 5 times, but it uses pillar. Like we haven't been using the word pillar, we've been calling them objectives. And there's a little bit of a quirk here. Actually, no, policy is okay. So yes, the presentations, I don't always pre-populate on the Friday before because I wanted time to sort of work on it, but we can post this tomorrow, like we typically do with everything.
Great. That's really it for me. The only other thing I wanted to mention, which I know we saw a lot of green and yellows. I also really appreciate that seeing reds force change. You know, sometimes just writing out what you're accomplishing, what you're looking to, I think seeing that red actually caused us to take action, which I think there's a lot of value in that. I have nothing else, so thank you for putting this together and for all your work on this. We are going to move on to our final agenda item, which is the superintendent report. Superintendent Schwan.
Yes, just a few final items to close out the meeting. As I noted, but I want to emphasize, I will be convening with Dr. Williamson, the VHS Healthy School Hours and Snow Days Student Working Group very shortly. Looking forward to that feedback. We're also going to be in the process of interviewing new applicants for the student rep position for the school committee. Hopefully we'll have someone seated for the next meeting. And as I mentioned, we'll be considering how to also make sure JDMS student voices are also engaged, represented. I do want to update the committee and the community about our crossing guard situation. I think I mentioned it before, but it is really a issue, and I'm going to look to Wendy again and Liz to make sure we need someone or someone's to step in and support that function. I am in the process of ensuring that between the schools and the police department that we have a clear plan in place that is fiscally sustainable to ensure that that high priority safety issue is addressed. But it is not ideal for either, school staff or, police staff who are not dedicated to this function to be covering that function, from a workflow standpoint, but from a fiscal standpoint especially. So I don't know what else we can do. I don't know why, in Bedford, we are having such a trouble, because other districts have crossing guards. So I just asked for everyone's best thinking about how to ensure that, we get someone, in the morning, in the afternoon. In the past, been one person who does both shifts. At this point, we're actually willing to break it up into 6 shifts. As Liz knows, I've talked with the custodians, I've talked with the ESPs, talked with administrative staff, food service. Does someone want to pick up additional hours? But we can't get a consistent system in place. Given the heightened concern over pedestrian safety here, it's not something we can let our guard down about. So I'm just double tweeting, emphasizing, if you want to serve the community in a way and get paid to do it, please consider the crossing guard position. Last, I want to let you and the community know that we are prepared to launch the formal search for the VHS principal right after the break. So the process will probably track similarly to the process that we use to hire assistant superintendent of teaching and learning. There will be intense stakeholder engagement, and we are thinking very carefully about making sure that student voices are included in an appropriate way and that their input is considered throughout that process. So be on the lookout for the information about that process launching after break. And very good luck to the students, athletes that are playing. I think maybe just finishing. I know it's senior night for the girls basketball team, and also we're looking forward to the performing arts presentation coming up soon for both the middle school and the high school. So lots still going on, even though it's cold out there.
Thank you. We'll go around once if anyone has anything to add. Kim?
Nothing else to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Angel?
Good, thank you.
Sarah?
I'll think of it, I'll try to think of the crossing guard, I'm stuck too, I don't know, there's, that. The, like, COA, I don't know. That's a, if you've talked to Allison over there, I'm not, yeah,
I haven't recently, I can try.
yeah.
I've raised it with the Bedford Community Partnership as well, so it's like I'm
Yeah.
basically saying that anytime I get a chance in a community setting. But let me talk with Allison directly.
Dedicated citizen to some.
I wrote something.
They already
a few months
did.
ago.
Yeah.
I can write it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think
Be like, there's still no crossing.
yeah, Kate Fisher working on that, you know, Highland and
Yeah.
so we tried, again, I don't really understand why it's so uniquely difficult. We have talked about the pay scale, maybe that's it, but. You know, so we're gonna be adjusting that, but I don't think we're not competitive. And it's not usually a position that people like travel very far for, so typically we would find something to do. So. Public service, crossing guard is very important, short, but very important job.
Yeah.
But maybe also like the weather right now, probably, so maybe when the ice freeze breaks. Someone will be for to spring.
That's all, thank you. Brad?
I will put you in touch with the community emergency response team. We had 40 volunteers on that organization, of which I'm one. And somebody in that group is probably exactly the right person for this job.
Okay.
So I will help you guide there.
Thank you very much, Brad.
All right. I just wanted to mention that tomorrow night is the Black History Month celebration.
Yes, thank you.
At the gym, I was putting up the details so I get it right. At 5:30 is the dinner, $20 a person, 6:30 is performances, and that's presented by Bedford Metco and their Severs. So it's a great event, I've gone several years. I encourage everyone to go. And then there's also the vertical concert tomorrow night.
Yes.
Which Yeah, so there's, unfortunately a conflict with that event, but you can still catch the dinner before the concert.
Yes, I have them both on.
All right, okay. Either, and that's all I have, so assuming there's nothing else, if there's no further business under the open session agenda, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the public meeting.
So moved.
Sarah seconded, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, ayes have it, this meeting is adjourned at 9:27. Thank you. No, how weird that is. Just remind me if I don't. Did you know?
Cliff, close the meeting.
Did you say?
Um,
Oh. sorry.
Cliff, close the meeting.
Yeah, let me close it from the other one later.
Did it not?